Barely Research Facts is a fact-based podcast brought to you by Art Now Thus, an experiential arts agency based out of Mumbai. Each week, we pick a word at random, dive into it and see where it brings us. We are your hosts. My name is Ragini and this is Shar. Hi! Welcome back!
Hello.
We're back! Okay, so also big news. This is our 8th episode, which means that we have now been doing this for about 4 months.
Wow. 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months.
We were just discussing where we were about 4 or 5 months ago and how nerve-wracking it was. And yeah, nerves were in shambles and now they're only in tatters.
Yes. Yes,
not
and
as bad.
Our self-esteem is much higher at this point than it was when we started off.
We wanted to just start this episode off by saying thank you to everyone who's been listening. Every single download, every single play, we're really appreciative because Ragini and I know the amount of work we've put into this, and we're so happy that we're getting some good feedback and that people are listening to Barely Research Facts.
Yes, and we get very excited every time we get a download. We get very excited every time we see the stats. And we now get very excited every time we have to record another episode as well.
Yeah, good.
Yay, it's all good. Okay, jumping in. Word for the week. Episode again. Okay, some things will just never change.
We might just have to start recording weekly episodes, quit our jobs, like move to the mountains and record
maybe this is the universe's way of telling us that this needs to be a weekly podcast.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Hey, remember when we were talking about our nerves in tatters? Okay, so the word for this episode is mirror. And yeah, let's just get right into it, Ragini.
Yeah. So, etymology of the word mirror. Also a word that I think I've been saying a lot ever since we started recording this podcast. Etymology.
Yeah.
Okay, so mirror apparently derives from the old French term mirror. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. Or based on the Latin mirer, which means to look at. Early users also sort of claim derivation of this term from a phrase that means a crystal used in magic and a person deserving imitation.
Oh, a person deserving imitation. That sounds nice.
Yeah, flattering.
Yeah. I want to be it.
Okay. You want to be a mirror? Okay.
No, I want to be a person with deserving imitation.
Okay. All right. So basically, I went into the history of mirrors in general. And it's quite fascinating, actually, because what you realize is that apparently human beings have been intrigued by shiny objects for as long as mankind has possibly existed. And there are multiple theories around this. The one that I found most interesting was that basically mirrors and anything that has a shiny surface reminds us of water. And therefore, people tend to, and we associate water with life and, just being alive. And therefore, human beings are attracted to it almost at a very primal level. And so even babies there've been studies conducted where babies have been given like a dull object and a shiny object, and they even babies will gravitate to a shiny object. Now this could also just be with the fact that it's shiny, so it's reflecting and it's just more generally like it just attracts your attention more. But I like the idea that we're attracted to mirrors because it reminds us of water and that makes us feel like we're alive.
Oh, we're magpies. We like shiny things and we like things that remind us of
us. Yes, not self-obsessed at all. All right. So mirrors have been in existence for, as far back as mankind has possibly been in existence. It is also often called one of mankind's most consistent civilizers, considering that possibly the first mirror ever used was a reflection in a pool of water. And then, of course, it sort of evolved from there.
Yeah.
And the earliest mirrors ever were very, very highly polished pieces of rock and stone. Particularly, there's obsidian, which is it's a naturally occurring volcanic glass. And there are examples of this that have been found in modern day Turkey, which date back to around 6000 BC. There were mirrors of like polished copper, which was found in Mesopotamia from 4000 BC. And in ancient Egypt from around 3000 BC. Also, polished stone mirrors were found in Central and South America that date back from around 2000 BC.
Jeez, this self-obsession goes way back.
Way back. Oh, it gets better. Because when metal mirrors came into existence...
Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay, so there were metal mirrors and they were just heavily polished metal that just reflected. But what were they adorned with? They were adorned with pictures of Eros, who is the god of desire, Aphrodite, who is the goddess of beauty and love. So clearly some things around mirrors and reflection just do not change. And then we come to the 3rd century where glass mirrors started coming into existence. and the technology of mirror making continued. Mirrors became clearer because they started using glass, and then they started like sort of fine-tuning that further. By the 14th century, there were guilds of mirror makers in Europe.
Remember the guilds of pepperers? Do you think?
Pepperers, yeah, I was thinking about that too.
I would have liked to have been both.
I'm going to make you hold that thought because in the 15th century, Venetian guildsmen had perfected the making of mirror to such a degree that along with Venetian lace, Venetian mirrors had turned into a leading export for Venice, obviously, and basically put them to a position of economic supremacy which they would maintain for about 150 years. But this meant that mirror making was so important to the economy that guildsmen were sold to uphold trade secrets upon the penalty of death, which is fine. Okay, you have a job, you don't want the competition, super. But if you ever wanted to leave the town of Venice, the city of Venice, your family would be held ransom, and if you failed to come back, they would be executed.
Oh my God! What if you left and, like me, I mean, if you were, I don't know, clumsy,
lost your way,
clumsy or directionless, or lacked a sense of direction, your family goes.
Yes, then you took a choice of being a mirror maker or being a traveler.
Okay, I want to be a pepperer. I don't want to be a mirror maker.
Okay. Yeah, so they did take it a bit seriously. By the 17th century, mirrors had now become essential to an aristocratic lady's toilet. Glass mirrors were considered very valuable, and most women had carried them around as their most prized possession. Later on in the 17th century, Louis the Sun King and the Saint-Gobain factory made their mark through the artistic achievement called La Grande Galerie, which is the Hall of Mirrors in the Chateau de Versailles. This was designed by Mansart. They began construction of this in 1678. The Grand Hall has 17 mirror-clad arches and encompasses 357 mirrors, reflecting 17 opposing arcade windows. And it is acknowledged as one of the most beautiful achievements of classical 18th century French art. Speaking of art, the invention of glass mirrors, of course, revolutionized the way people were seeing themselves. But what it also did is that it revolutionized how artists began to paint.
Okay.
So what happened is that the mirror is cited as being very critical to the discovery of linear perspective, which has basically changed the way artists paint. Now, I'm going to come down to explain what that is, okay? Before the period of the Renaissance, which is around the 15th century, if you see a lot of works of art, they almost have a comic-like quality to it, because the artists were struggling to depict depth. So you were painting on a 2D surface, but to create a 3D image was something that they hadn't been able to really figure out. So a lot of times what they would do is, if you see paintings that date prior to the period of Renaissance, is that the most prominent figure would be painted and would be much bigger in stature and would be the most prominent person in the painting. And then people around him would be placed in varying statures.
Proportions, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so it's still, obviously it wasn't giving a sense, it's not realistic and it doesn't look realistic. And that's something that artists were struggling to figure out. In about the 1300s, artists had started trying to create an illusion of depth in their figures, especially by creating, so the main characters in a painting would be much bigger, would be much stockier, just so that, just by the bulk of it, you could sort of create some kind of depth. But when it came to actually placing them in more realistic settings, which were, more earthly settings, they struggled with how to, again, place them so that it would look
real,
lifelike.
Yeah.
Now, in the 15th century, there was an Italian architect called Philippe Brenelleski, who is credited with, so there's some conjecture whether he discovered or rediscovered linear perspective. Possibly painters in, ancient Greece and Rome during antiquity may have had some knowledge of linear perspective. If they do, there isn't much information available to us right now about it. In the modern world, Philippe Brenelleski is credited with having discovered linear perspective. He was on a trip to Rome that he kind of started trying to figure out how he could accurately portray what he was seeing. And then he came back to Italy, and what he did was that he created a painting or a depiction of the baptistry of Florence. All right. And what he did was that opposite the baptistry, there was a cathedral, and he stood right inside the doors of that cathedral. And then using the principles of linear perspective, which is basically to create a painting with keeping in mind a vanishing point, which is in level with where the human eye depicts the line of horizon, right? And just converging diagonals across varying parts of the painting that again converge at the point of
focal interest,
the horizon, at the vanishing point, right? So the diagonals, along with the series of diagonals that sort of converge at the vanishing point, would create a sense of, would give you a far more realistic sense of how you can perceive the particular object that you're painting and its surroundings. So in this case, he painted the baptistry and he painted its surroundings. We will put a video to this in the blog post because it's really interesting. But what he also did after that was he created this tiny painting, all right, that he could hold. And in the center of that painting, he put a small hole. He looked through that, all right. So when he's standing in the cathedral, the baptistry is opposite him. He's painted it and he looks through it and he could see the baptistry. And then he took a mirror and held it in front of the painting. Now, basically, the painting is in front of his face. He's facing the back of the painting, but through the hole in the painting, he can see the baptistry that he's painted. And then when he takes the mirror, he holds the mirror up and he can see the painting that he's made because it's reflecting in the mirror, right? And he is able to check and see if the lines that he has drawn in the painting converge with the lines as the way he's able to see. And therefore, he's able to match the linear perspective of his eye to the linear perspective that is reflected in his painting.
Wow.
And that was his first experiment on perspective in art. And thereafter, and that's how he sort of went ahead and created or discovered linear perspective in art. And therefore, in Renaissance is when you start seeing paintings that come about that look much more realistic, that look much more like they're depicting real life. And so perspective sort of comes into being. So the use of the mirror is actually
made it easier for him
to be able to sort of conduct this experiment and be able to establish linear perspective and change the way we see art going forward.
Good job, Fillipos.
Yeah, good job, Ragini, as well.
I mean, I like him so much, I nicknamed him.
Philippos. So that's the history of the mirror, with how the mirror was used to develop linear perspective in art.
Thanks, Ragini. That was really interesting. I was just sat here like a rapt audience. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm glad. Okay.
So now going from the history of the mirror to something called a true mirror. Have you heard of a true mirror?
Is this a mirror that doesn't laterally invert the image?
Mystery solved.
Yay! Yay!
Okay, so there's a real mirror and then there's a true mirror. Okay, now the modern mirror that we all use, it's made by basically silvering or spraying a thin layer of silver or aluminium, which is the reflective bit of the mirror, onto the back of a sheet of glass. And it was, I think you've mentioned this, but it was invented in the 1830s. And that is sort of like the older method of making a mirror. It was less reliable, etc. But now what they do is, which I would love to watch, by the way, but apparently they're made by heating aluminium in a vacuum, which then bonds to the cooler glass. So that's how they make mirrors now.
Oh.
Yeah. And then there's also something called the non-reversing mirror. And there's patents for this have existed because it's like it's a curiosity. I think it's something that you would have seen in a fair or in a, like a circus or something like that, where you just have a stall and you have a non-reversing mirror and people would come in there, be horrified by what they saw.
Wow. That's bad.
Yeah. It messes with your head. When you go right, your image goes left. So it's really unsettling. Now, the way that they did the non-reversing mirrors is very technologically advanced. It was placing two mirrors side by side, perpendicular to each other, basically. So, so essentially what you'd see is a reflection of your reflection, which was your true self.
Oh, okay.
And if you looked into it, horror of horrors, all the things that you thought you looked like are shattered. Your perception of yourself is shattered. So basically, when you look in the mirror now, you're laterally inverted. And you get used to the asymmetries of your face.
Okay.
Because you're brushing your teeth, you're looking in the mirror every so often. So you get used to it, right? But when that's reversed, it's unsettling. You don't look like yourself. You feel a bit disconnected from the person in the mirror. So it begs And
sorry for the people who have to see you in real life otherwise.
Yes. And this is also the reason why most people don't like photographs of themselves, because they don't match the image that you see in the mirror. So if you ever
should try this out.
Just reverse your webcam and be horrified. Enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Now, I wanted to, from being horrified to the complete opposite, being fascinated. So you and I are both Indian, right, Ragini? Just checking. I'm just like...
Last I checked, yeah.
So, have you heard of something called the Aranmula Kannadis?
Only from you.
Oh, okay, good. I like to hoard information. Not precious. The Aranmula Kannadis is translates as the Aranmula mirror. Kannadi is mirror in Malayalam, which is the language spoken in Kerala in India.
Did not know that. No, I didn't know Kannadi was mirror in Kerala.
You've got Malu in you, haven't you? You've got a little Kerala in you.
Yeah, but I pretty much speak like one word of
Okay, so the two now, Kannadi.
Vanda Kannadi. Don't want mirror.
That's a whole sentence. So we're making progress.
Yeah, yay!
And I think it should be Kannadi.
My grandmother will be proud. Okay.
Okay, so from the Malayalam lesson, the Aranmula mirror or the Aranmula Kannadi, it's a handmade metal alloy mirror. So I'll explain a little bit about why it's different. It's made in Aranmula, which is a small town in Pathanamthitta in Kerala. Unlike the normal like silvered glass mirrors or the aluminium ones that I was just talking about earlier, it's a metal alloy mirror, and it's also called a first surface mirror or a front surface reflection mirror. So basically, the exact metals used in the alloy are completely secret. The mirrors are made historically by this family with the secret recipe passed down through this family called the Vishwakarma family. Though some metallurgists have suggested that it has like a mix of copper and tin. It's polished for several days to achieve the mirror's reflective surface. So it doesn't have a backing. It doesn't have any of that sort of thing. It just is polished, highly polished metal. And I have one.
Wow. I know.
Yeah. I've sent you pictures of it. It's beautiful. It's a hand mirror and it's got ornate, brass outer. And then the inner bit that has the mirror is sort of inlaid within it. And it's a little oval and it's beautiful. And it looks nothing like what you'd imagine. Like you'd think that it looked a bit warped in places or bumpy or whatever, but no, it's completely flat and it's completely reflective.
And do you see yourself like as you see yourself in a regular mirror in that? Or?
Yeah, you do.
Oh.
Because it's still light bouncing back towards you, so it's not horrifying. If that's what you're asking. Apparently, it's linked to the Parthasarathi temple, which is in Pathanamthitta. The legend has it that some centuries ago, 8 families of experts in temple arts and craft were brought to Aranmula from Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu. They were given the task of undertaking, decorative work in the Parthasarathi temple. And while they were working with bronze to make a crown for the deity of the temple, who was Lord Parthasarathi, they stumbled upon a unique reflective property of an alloy that was copper and tin. They tried different compositions and they perfected the recipe, and then it eventually led to them having this as a very guarded secret. So the proportions are still not known, and the family is the only one who knows about it. So they keep making the same mirrors to this day.
Wow. So I think what we're learning is that across the world, mirror making has been taken very seriously.
Yeah.
Lots of people are just like, no, will not tell, will not let you leave.
Yeah. God, yeah, people guarded secrets like this really viciously. Kill your family type of viciously.
I kind of went into a little bit of a whimsical indulge in my research. And I heavily went down the road of superstitions associated with mirrors.
Let's do this.
Yes. All right. So we do know, everyone knows that, vampires, witches, ghosts don't have reflections. And so when they look into a mirror, they don't see themselves. And that's because old superstition is that a mirror reflects the soul, and if you don't have a soul, there is no reflection.
Oh.
So if you're hanging out with somebody and they don't have a reflection, then
or
run as fast as you can.
Or you could use it as a really like a cool insult, and by cool I mean in a not at all kind of way. You don't have a reflection.
You have a reflection, bro.
That's terrible.
Yeah, so bad. We should try it sometime.
Yeah.
Take a video, send it to us. Let's see what happens. Okay. The other one is, at midnight on Halloween, if you peel an apple in one long continuous strip in front of a mirror, and then you toss the peel over your left shoulder with your right hand, your future husband will be revealed to you in the mirror.
Wow.
There are some versions that also say that you should eat the apple.
After or before?
I'm guessing after you peel it.
Okay, so
maybe they're just trying to avoid waste in this.
Yeah, probably.
But the website that I was reading this at had a very strong disclaimer saying, make sure you do your research before you give this one a shot.
Why? In case you're... I'm so
in
confused.
case you don't eat the apple.
Oh, okay.
End up seeing some random guy and then you start... So they were like...
No, not Jeff.
We'll tell you. And then comes the most interesting one. This is the legend of the Bloody Mary.
Oh, God.
If you stand in a darkened room with a lit candle and you look into a mirror and you say the words Bloody Mary some number of times, or this number varies according to which website you're looking at, but it could be 3, 7, 14, 16.
Okay.
I'd suggest stop at 2 because no one's mentioned 2.
Yeah, turns out it's actually 1.
And either Bloody Mary will come out of the mirror and scratch your face. So, I don't know. I think that person who had that might just have had a cat in the house.
Also, is that the only consequence to do it?
No, sometimes she can come and haunt you for the rest of your life.
Oh, okay, that's better.
It does escalate exponentially.
Okay.
But the cool thing about this is just, there are multiple psychological theories about why this happens. None of them have been concretely proven. There is a lot of conjecture about how did this come about, and there are figures from history who this could be based upon.
Yeah.
One of them is, so there's Mary Tudor, who was basically famous for putting a lot of Protestants to death. She would burn them at the stake for heresy.
Pleasant lady.
Like most royalty, I guess, back in the day.
Okay.
So that's her. There's Mary Worth, who was a witch who was executed in the Salem witch trials. And then there is a very, very interesting, and I say interesting because I really don't know what other term to use for her, horrifying, I guess, person called Elizabeth Bathory.
I've heard of her.
Yes, also known as the Queen of Blood. Now, Elizabeth Bathory holds this amazing place in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most prolific female murderer of all time. I would like to also bring to your notice that at this point, she lived in the late 16th century and died somewhere in the first half of the 17th century. And since then, no one has been able to claim that title from her. So, just context there.
Oof.
Well, she was basically this noble woman. So she was born into a prominent Protestant family in Hungary. Her family also had controlled Transylvania. Her uncle was the king of Poland. So she came from extreme wealth and nobility and privilege. She was married at the age of 15 and to a count who was a member of another powerful Hungarian family, and subsequently moved into a castle that was gifted to them as a wedding gift from his family. Everything else here is rumors. There were rumors that she's also, because she came from such a prominent family and there was this desire to keep the bloodlines pure, there is talk of there being a lot of inbreeding, and so therefore she obviously came out a little bit off her hinges. She also had an aunt or an uncle who kind of introduced her to satanic practices when she was about 10 or something like that. So she really comes from a very queer family. And right after her marriage, she convinced her husband to build a torture chamber for her, and he did that to keep her happy.
Lovely.
But apparently her husband would still sort of rein in her more heinous tendencies. And there were rumors that were abounding. She abducted multiple peasant girls and women. Girls as young as 10 were abducted. And then slowly she started abducting women of higher stature. There were noble women who started going missing. There were rumors that the government was basically turning a blind eye to it for a long time. They tried to pretend like it wasn't happening. I think a huge part of it was her privilege and her status in society that was protecting her. But at some point, sometime between 1602 or 1604, the numbers just increased so exponentially that it became difficult to ignore. In 1609, she and her servants were arrested and they were put on trial for the kidnapping, torture and murder of up to 650 girls.
What a vile person. Yuck.
Yeah. The 4 servants put on trial along with her. 3 of the servants were executed. She herself was never formally tried eventually, but she was confined to her chambers at her castle and remained there until she died. And she was basically locked in a room with a vent for air and for food to come in and out of. And 3 years later, she died at the age of 54. Her husband had died in the war. Do you know what else is based on the myth of Elizabeth Bathory, by the way?
What else?
She's rumored to have inspired Dracula. So one of the things that she did was she believed that drinking the blood of young girls would keep her youthful. So she has been called a vampire.
Okay.
Not a few times, but as a result of it, she's also rumored to have in part inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay, interesting.
I think the connection with Transylvania also could have something to do with that.
So, from the most gruesome murder in the history of the world, do you want to talk now about two-way mirrors?
Okay.
I feel like we were a murder podcast for the last 5 minutes.
We went into a full crime.
I feel like I need to have a murder case to talk about. No, so two-way mirrors. I mean, obviously, this is the fear that a majority of women have when they walk into a dressing room with a large mirror on the wall, especially paranoid people like me. I immediately do the test. You know what the test is.
Oh, you do?
You put your finger up to the mirror, and if your fingers touch, if the reflection of your finger and your actual finger touch, then run like the wind away from there.
Okay.
Now let me explain why.
Or just don't pee.
Yeah, don't. Why would you pee in a changing room?
Oh, changing room. Sorry, I thought you were in a bathroom. Sorry, don't pee if you're in the changing room regardless.
This, huge piece of advice. Don't pee in changing room. So let me tell you a little bit more about two-way mirrors. They're fascinating how they're made. So they're made by coating one side of a sheet of glass with a very thin, very lightly reflective material. Now, how is this different from a normal mirror? Because that's how I described a normal mirror was made. Well, the reflective side is close to you. So in a normal mirror, the reflective material is placed at the back of the mirror. It's on the side away from you. But in a two-way mirror, it's reversed. The reflective material is on the side that you're on. And when the coated side faces a lighted room, some of the light reflects and some goes into the dark room behind the mirror. So essentially what it does is it creates this effect of one side being reflective enough for you to be sort of duped by it, because you do see your own reflection, but it's not 100% reflective. It's close to 70% reflective. So some of the light passes through, and that's why it's two-way. And so have you watched detective movies and TV serials, especially like Law and Order?
Oh, you mean the interrogation room with the guys standing there?
The interrogation room is brightly lit. It's like the worst lighting for like a selfie, but go it for interrogating. And it's adjoined to this other room by the mirror, and the second smaller room is darker. So when you're in the room that is brightly lit, you can't see past the reflective surface. You can only see your reflection, but the person obviously on the other side can see all of you. It's similar to if you were standing outside on the street in the dark and looking into a house that was brightly lit. The people in the house can't see you because of just the light differences, but you can see clearly into their house. I don't advise doing it, just similar to not peeing in changing rooms. Don't stand outside when it's dark and look into a house.
Turning into a massive PSA episode.
So that's how two-way mirrors are made. The first two-way mirror, called the transparent mirror, was invented by Emil Bloch. He was this Russian guy who was living in Ohio in the US when he patented it, and he called it his transparent mirror, and he patented it on the 17th of February in 1903, not very long ago.
Yeah,
100 years, some would say. So now we've already mentioned the fingernail test, so use that if you are ever doubtful about the mirrorness of a mirror. Because there are creepy incidents that have happened that would make you do the fingernail test everywhere. So apparently there's this in Berwyn, Illinois. There's a bar called, I don't know if it still exists, but was called the Cigars and Stripes. And there was a two-way mirror set into the door inside a women's restroom. So imagine this. You are 3 drinks down, you're stumbling into the loo, you've got to use the facilities. You walk in, you see an innocuous looking door inside the restroom that you would assume leads to, I don't know, like a janitorial closet, which it was. And then you go do your business and blah, blah, blah. And then you find out later that it's a two-way mirror. And it's so like cursed ideas. Like, when you're sitting in a boardroom and people are throwing ideas and one of the ideas comes forward and you're like, why would you do that? Except everybody in this boardroom or this meeting room was like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds like fun. Yeah, I'm sure women won't mind at all. Also, let's definitely not tell them about it.
Yes, of course. Let's keep the element of surprise.
So apparently the owner of the pub, this guy called Ronnie Lotz, he fiercely defended the bathroom mirror, claiming that it was part of the Halloween themed decor. He said, I will burn this effing place to the ground before I get rid of that mirror. Do you know how much joy that mirror has brought to us? We're synonymous with Halloween. We do a freaky family fun day and all the kids look into the mirror. This is a fun house, honey. And if you don't like the two-way mirror, you can go and do stuff to yourself, he said. his words.
Oh my God, that is wrong on so... I can't even begin to unpack that because it is wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
The family, the children.
Insane. Just, all the words he used, please never use those. PSA, extra PSA.
Yeah. Extra.
But apparently the outrage center of the internet, Reddit, came across this and it blew up on Reddit and people had differing opinions about it, etc. And I don't know how you could have a differing opinion about it, but it's gross. Just, if you're going to have something like that in any kind of public setting, you make it the hook for whatever your pub is. So apparently, coming to this, I don't know if it makes it better because it's as sleazy, but there are two-way mirrors in a Scottish nightclub in the ladies' room that is used to provide a show for the male patrons in expensive private booths. I mean, there are regular patrons also who go to the club, and that's what sparked this controversy. But apparently they charge £800 to book a booth. And it's the mirror that you look into when you, where the sinks are. So they look through them and show what they see is women standing in front of the mirror.
My question is, do the women know that the bathroom mirror is a two-way mirror?
Some of them do, apparently, and some of them don't. And the way that the Scottish club, it's called the Shimmy Club, just to put them on blast. But they apparently say that the mirror is a design feature meant to be a fun talking point for people visiting. And apparently, this is all the lines of defense that they've taken. The sight line, which is what you see when you look into the two-way mirror, is very limited and allows for glimpses into the wash-up area only. So not inside, where you do the business, but...
Oh, okay, that's considerate. Yeah. I mean, that just makes everything better. Yeah, of course it does. Oh, God.
So, essentially, people will do anything in the name of publicity. I don't think either of these two places exist. If they do, then please feel free to review them. Badly.
And so, what have we learned from this segment?
Don't pee in.
Do not pee in changing rooms. And just run the two-way mirror test. All right. Okay. So, my last fact for this podcast is, it's actually about a mirror image. The reason why this is cool is because in June 2020, there was an article that came out where scientists had discovered a mirror image of the Earth and the Sun 3,000 light years away.
Wow.
Which I think is really cool. Yeah. So the star Kepler 160 and the planet KOI 456 are quite similar to the Sun and the Earth, more than any other planets that have previously been discovered, which makes it much more conducive to life as we see it on Earth. This was discovered by a team of scientists in Germany. And what they discovered is that the planet orbits the star at a distance similar to that of the Earth from the Sun and takes approximately 378 days to complete one revolution. So yeah, but that's a bit about a mirror image of the Earth and the Sun that is 3,000 light years away from us, could potentially host life similar to the way the Earth does. And that's all we know about it, actually. Or at least that's all I know about it at this point.
You and me both. And that's our episode.
Which may not be a very high bar. Yeah, that's our episode. We will see you in 2 weeks again, guys. It's our 9th episode then. And then we'll do something really special for our 10th episode. 10. I know. Yay.
See you guys.
Okay, cool. That's it for today. The episode you just heard was edited by Mohit Chandelier. Music for the episode is by Charita Arora. If you liked the episode, if you'd like to talk to us about the episode, or if you have a word you'd like us to research, drop us a message. We'd love to hear from you. We're on Instagram at Barely Research Facts, or you could visit our website www.artnowdas.in. We'll see you next time.